Yeah, so as Josh said, I'm John Hyland. I know pretty much everybody, which is helpful. Kind of started down a rabbit hole though when I got this topic. Unfortunately, Jocelyn, Rob, and I meet about once a month and we start putting things together, and it always ends up with much longer to-do list and many more things to do and how to do it, and we can't do it. When can we do it? So I've tried to figure it into this as much as I can. What most probably don't know is more my background and what I'm coming from. I started playing rugby when I was 7. And we talk about that community side of things. That was very much for me. I then went to school, secondary school or high school, to play rugby. I then played at provincial schoolboys, went to an Irish schoolboys camp, got beaten up by Dennis Leamy, and unfortunately he was at 8 and I was at 10. Um, and then left it at that, realized I'm never going to be good enough. Uh, Back injuries led me into coaching. And that's when I got down that path, and that's 24 years ago. Going into club management, into community side of things, and into coaching particularly. So it's trying to figure out how do we do that. I've been through soccer, badminton, table tennis, pickleball, did a bit of consulting with cricket, teached at Humber College, was for a little while there. And so it's kind of been around to figure, right, where do we go? So it's trying to put a lot of that into what we're doing. I'm not clicking. Yeah. Try to do a little bit of this to pick. It's fun how it changes color from mine. Big one, and somebody mentioned earlier, is the ecosystem. What is the ecosystem of rugby? And this is one of those things we're trying to figure out and we're trying to learn. Who do we actually have a part of that? We're there, Rugby Canada, our branches and our clubs. But it's more the big thing that we usually struggle with is roles and responsibilities. Whose job is it to do what? Where does that fit in? How do we do it? So that's been one of the interesting pieces that we've tried to look at. So I've kind of gone from top down in this way. Did you hit them all at once? Okay, yeah, I'm having fun with these. So when we look at what Rugby Canada kind of look at, this is me just spitting things out quickly. Their main one is actually high performance. I do have issues with people using that terminology because it's usually used incorrectly. But the national teams are actually high performance. We look at the management systems. We got Play HQ coming through. We got Breakdown coming into play. We got a new ref management system that will be announced, please, soon. And then we look at training and education. All the certification and everything else comes from Rugby Canada. Then it comes into us. We are high performance, or I prefer to call it performance development, as we kind of head towards that direction. Jack showed you the LTAD model. I found it funny when I was doing my master's in sports science in England, we studied all the Canadian research and then happened to move here. So it was great fun, and then seeing that none of it is implemented actually in our system here. So it's great research. Practicality is a little bit something to be done. Our job then is mainly putting on competitions. That's the main forte of what a provincial body, when we look at what the Ontario government tells us our job is and why they give us some money, that's it. That's the main reason. High performance, those teams going towards Canada Summer Games and competitions. What we want to do though is add a bit more on the club development side. Thank you for coming out to Kingston. And then the game management. I like to incorporate coaches and match officials together to understand our roles as actually managing the games. Stop being in isolation, but actually realizing our one sole job within them. Then we move up to branches. I'm 2.5 years in this role now. A lot of the times is, why do we have branches? What do they do? What's their purpose? Where do they fit in? I question that at times too. So do they. We do meet on a monthly basis as the presidents and myself to figure out what's going on, what's the intel that's coming from them up to me, and how it's going to go back down again. What we want to look at doing is that localized competition. And I'm going to look at a little bit more of that, particularly that junior stuff, the minors, the youth, how we need to have a little bit closer local knowledge rather than coming from an ivory tower, which sometimes people think we are, actually to having the local side of it. That performance development, we thought it was interesting looking at Carl's thing of that ambiguity between high performance and participation. We want to make sure of that as well. But the big one I want to see is club representation. I don't know if I see this enough, mainly because we don't have that roles and responsibility. So if I'm going to be meeting them on a monthly basis, then you should be able to get to them to tell us. Mind you, most people have no issues picking up a phone and calling me anyway, which is great. I will never turn it down. And then the clubs may only have one word, but for me, it's everything. I'm a club person. When you come from the west of Ireland, everything is based around your local GAA club. I was actually back in Ireland last week, and we go up to the pitch. I had my 5-year-old son with me. At least 3 to 4 days when it just stopped raining for that 10 minutes, we were on the Gaelic football pitch kicking a ball around. That was the main thing. And participation is everything. Community was the other big one that's used, and I love that word because that's what it is. There's one more though, and it's on the outside. Hopefully it'll click in. The education system. Second slides. Where does the education system fit into what we're trying to do? No, it's probably the animation I try to do. Yeah, forget it. Schools. Yeah, you can just move it on. Where do schools fit in? Whether it be high schools, elementary, university, colleges. For me, it was always one of those interesting ones when looking at the competition calendar. We fit everything after OFSA, before OUA and OCAA starts, but have 14 to 15 full weeks of season in a 10-week calendar. Charlotte's had a great time figuring how to do magic of these things over the last little while. How do we put something potentially before OFSA, but that's a no-no because that's there. So it's a matter of how we fit this in and what we can control. Somebody asked me earlier about, Jordy, about whether schools are going to use some of this system. But schools don't barely want to talk to us unless they want our referees. But funnily enough, it's only OFSA will take them for the weekend of OFSA. And Mike's had fun trying to sort that out over here. But they don't want to talk to us for the whole of spring. But they want the referees. Same with OUA and OCAA. We've had conversations with them. It's like, well, how do we fit together? If your athletes are actually better prepared for your off season using our competition, you don't need 3 weeks of off-season prep. It's a periodized calendar. We can actually work this together, but no. The most frustrating part for me is all the coaches are all in the same 2 systems, but yet we still can't work together. So this is where we're trying to get that down into that local level to find how do we make that communication a little bit better. So this has been a transition. I first moved in April 2023. I spent that first year just trying to figure out what the hell's going on. And that was a lot. There's no point in changing. So we kind of tried to do little tweaks for 2024. We tried to focus as much as we could on match officials. That was the big one that came out of 23 was we need to help the match officials. There's not enough of them. There's too many doing this, that, and the other. There's no consistency. There's no development. There's no education. There's no anything. So we kind of spent as much as we could on that. 2024, 2025, we then start moving into our competition structure. So this is where we kind of had to look and kind of go around. And it was funny traveling around quite a bit. So whether I went to Collingwood, I went to Ottawa, we went to London, went all around just talking to people and listening to clubs. One club said it was hilarious that somebody actually made it to Ottawa. I'm like, it was great. The train was 4 hours delayed, but it was great fun. But it's amazing listening to how it's so different everywhere across the province. That was one of the very, very interesting things to listen. And how do we go through that transition? And I'm trying to think of it more, not change, but evolution. Change seems to be a difficult word for a lot of people. So we try to think of, right, let's use it as growth and evolve what we're trying to do and try to move this in a bit forward. Okay. So that for me leads to this chaos in my head. There's so many things going on. Just click a few through. So we wanted to look at what are my 4 main areas. Clubs are number 1. Without clubs, we don't have rugby. It's as simple as that. So how do we look at that and say, right, where's the help needed? We got to think of the amount of volunteers that are in our sport, which is everybody. We got to move things forward, but yet we cannot overburden. We have to make things easier, but make things better. They're a little bit of contradictory within themselves. So how do we make all of those things happen? Well, we look at game management. How do we make it easier for coaches and match officials? I found it interesting when Liz was talking earlier on. It's like I came from being a technical director of a $4 million club in 5,500 participants in the city of Toronto, and then having 35 coaches that I could go to because they're all paid. They're all right there. I had 10 full-time staff that we could turn to make things happen. And then we look and say, oh, geez, we got nothing. How do we do the same thing? And a lot of people say, well, we should be doing what soccer is doing. So that's a whole different system. Whole different system. You talk to people in soccer and they'll say, Jesus, don't do what we did. Don't go there. Liz was talking about the club licensing. I sat on the board of my kids' soccer club for a little while and went through the club licensing with that club. It's 155 different things you have to go through in order to be granted a license. And what's the benefit of it? You get to say you have a license. Like for me, what's the point? Unless it actually does something and helps you be better. And this was the interesting thing when OPDL came in. So is everybody understanding what OPDL and where that fits in and what it is? No? So the Ontario Player Development League, which is really a program, started about 12 years ago. So they wanted to standardize clubs, not competition. They wanted to get this club standards raised as much as they could. So they had to bring it in, you had to reach, and you to do at that time, thankfully, only 38 things in order to be at this level. There were 12 organizations taken in across the province. They were deemed the best of the best clubs based on the structure. One of the interesting things we found, though, as you go through it, is when you look at some of the other clubs, they had very, very familiar strategic plans. They had very familiar operational plans. When we went through, we actually found they forgot to erase one of our names on it. They left our name on it. So it was really just a copy and paste job. If we just copy and paste, though, they're not actually doing the programs. They're not making the organizations better. They're not growing the sport. So it was interesting to see now where they are versus where the club that I had. One of them stayed at 2,000. One of them grew by 3,000. Because they actually did the work to put the plan in place. It took time. It took 7 years to actually grow to that point. But we did it. And a big focus was on the game management. We developed referees in-house in our club. We had somebody that was focused on a club to do that. We focused a lot of time on and used Trillium grants, thankfully, to do coach development. 1 year, we spent $140,000 on coach development. That's the beauty of having a club in soccer where you have a $4.5 million budget. Beautiful thing. How do we do that, though? We do not come anywhere close to that. So this is where I started to look at competition. What drives our sport? It's competition. Where do we actually take part? Where do we play the game? So that's why a big one went into competition and how we do that. Some people think I'm nuts for what we've done in the last year or so. I'm okay with that. My wife agrees. But the big thing is the players. Have they improved? Have we got more of them? Carl's research will tell them a lot of them coming back. And that's really the most important thing. We think of our jobs as coaches. For me, the number one job was, are my kids coming back? That's it. Okay, keep going. So as we were doing this, the big thing came to me is the what, the who, the where, the why. What are we doing? Like, what's our sport really about? If we look at the emotions that came around the Women's World Cup and how we did in that, like that was phenomenal. Everybody was watching. And I mean, people talk to me that know nothing about rugby. They were all coming up talking about it. I was at home, when I was at home last week, it's like, obviously I was in a pub. So in that way, even somebody there brought it up. Like, that's something. they're talking about Canada and rugby, that's fantastic. Who's doing everything is volunteers. All of you. It's like a lot of you talked about how do we move away from an operation board into staff and it's a lot of money. This is the problem. It's like we look at it ourselves, it's like there's 11 of us at the provincial office that are trying to do as many things as we do, plus a little part-time things. Not saying you're a thing, Echo, but we put some bits that way that we can try do. Because that's the only way to fit it. We need people. So this is where we're very lucky to partner with the likes of Carl to actually figure a lot of the research out. This is our big hope on Play HQ. I'll press it down. But we want the technology to help us. So we're putting a lot of into that one. We're hoping we look at breakdown and see, well, is that going to make life easier for everybody going through? Where is it taking place? I'm talking about groundskeepers. And is there anything to that? It's like a lot of it is on municipal fields where we have no control over anything. It's like there's a dribble of rain down in Toronto and there's no more anything allowed on that grass. It's horrendous. We look in October when we're doing the sevens, we're like, luckily we got Barrie and Kingston had fields that were usable. It's very, very tough. How many actually have clubhouses? A lot more than other sports. Do we utilize them? Not well enough. So that's the big thing we got to have a look at. But for me, and this is the question that comes with everything, usually when Sandra tries to say something, why are you doing that? Like, why are we doing anything? If we're not doing it to benefit our sport and where it's growing and our athletes and make life easier for our volunteers to help grow it, we're not doing it. So this is where it kind of comes back to each of those little bits and pieces. Okay. So I had fun with ChatGPT the other day. Just threw things down and create a cloud. These are the kind of mind things that are with me all the time. What's going on with minors, youth? What's going on with rookie? What's going on with game leaders? How do we fit education into everything? Just asking about our club days when we've asked to go do coaching and match official courses. Like we're getting there. But this is the thing. This is what goes on a daily basis. My staff usually laugh at me because they'll ask what today was like, and I've had 6 meetings on 7 different topics. Trying to keep up with it. It's great fun. While then being a taxi to 2 kids going to different activities all evenings. It's great fun. So this is where we got to fit everything in. Because I'm also conscious that there's you doing all of this within your own club. Okay, next. So for me, it was how do we make it clear? We didn't have a pathway. So this is what I wanted to kind of create and have a look at. Is all right, are we following something that has a bit of tangibility to it? I like to base everything off competition ages to make it easier. So we've broken it down into our minors, our youth, our junior, and our senior. Then within that, who's going to officiate these things? Who's going to coach them? It's like, how do they have an impact towards that performance development? What fits into where? We look at OCAA, we look at OUA, we look at branch, we look at where Canada Games fits in. And so on the phone with Kevin Rouet yesterday from Senior Women's, trying to see what they're trying to do, where they want to fit things in. Steve Meehan wants to do a different thing for the men's than the women's. They don't want to touch the juniors and the younger ages, but they want us to make sure we have players coming through. So it's like, right, could you please just put it together? It'd make my life easier. One of the things that Jocelyn and I have been talking about with Rob is, well, what do you want? So we said it to Steve Meehan in November when we were talking and said, right, when you get a player at U20, what do you want them to be? Like, what are those skill matrix that they must have accomplished? So he said he does have something. He's just not ready to share it yet. I'm like, well, I kind of need it. So we've been looking at that, and it's something that we had in soccer. At the time, Canada Soccer laid out, right, for U16s, we must have players that can do A, B, and C. So we could just reverse engineer that And we went right the way down to U6. So, right, by the end of U6, I want players who have achieved A, B, and C. And how do we build that up? I used to liken it to a staircase. You're not going to jump to step 5. You got to build your way up. So what are each of those matrices, each of those things we want to accomplish? So that's what we were trying to look at within this. And it's something that we're still working on. But we've got to make sure that the education and development matches that. For me, I very much hate to be able to say, you're going to get fined for this. You're going to get disciplined for this. If we haven't provided you the resource and training, we shouldn't say a word. So this is the key part and what we've got to be able to go, right, for game leaders, what are we doing to provide you with that resource? Thankfully, it came out in the research as well, which is always helpful. So that allows us to say, right, we are now focusing Rob's job next year on that. This is what he's going to do. He's going to create these resources, and with the use of breakdown on how that is, we're able to set that out much easier so volunteers were able to do it. Same when it comes into the level ones. We're having a chat with Steph Veal and with the team at Rugby Canada saying, what's the point of level 1? Anybody got their hockey coaching? No? This was an eye-opener for me. My son decided this year to start playing hockey. Very foreign for an Irishman. But I went through 9 hours of training and I stand on the bench and open the door and shut the door. But the training was fantastic. And it was very weird. My wife was like, why are you happy doing 9 hours of this training? Because it was so relevant to what we want to do. I just wish we had hockey's money to do it. It was very, very simple for me as a parent to be able to go through this and say, I got an hour now, I can do that. I'll come back again later and I can do more. But it actually relates it to U7. I didn't have to think about U9. I can do that one later. But it kept it focused to U7. So I got my body done, and then at the end of it, you go towards this. The other parts that we looked at is like your respect in sport. Anybody done respect in sport for other sports? Yeah, very, very useful. Making ethical decisions, actually doing proper waivers, getting your background checks done. All of these things. And what I loved, I think, more than anything was when I went near the bench and I hadn't finished off the last piece on one page, I got kicked off. I was not allowed near that side of the rink because I hadn't fully completed everything. That for me was brilliant. Not that I could get away with doing nothing that day. I finished it on the other side. It's the culture that was involved that wouldn't allow it. Standard is here. If you do not get to here, go away. And that's for coaches. Because if coaches don't do it, the kids are never going to get them. If the coaches can't do it, the environment that's created for the officials on the ice or on the pitch is never going to get them. So this is where we have to have a look at that. So we're having that chat with Rugby Canada on that education side of things. How do we make it easier? How do we make it more virtual? We've learned an awful lot through COVID, unfortunately, on that side of things. Even on match officials. I know Karen is still online, but that was an hour of my drive up last night. It was Karen Azada talking to me, which is always great, about the education, about development, about these things, and how do we help. So what we're looking at doing is just creating that little bit of a hybrid session for the education, because it's a matter of like, and I'll show you some of the stats in a bit. Last year we did a lot less courses for match officials, but the quality of the course was 10 times better. So the people that are coming out of that are going to be so much better because they did it a little bit virtual, a little bit during their practices, and then they went to a tournament or they went to games at the end of it. So they had real life practical experience of officiating and learning while they're going through that with educators. That's the much better way to do it. So in that way, that's how we're looking at using that system to come through. Okay. So what's our objective? For me, it's simple. Raise the standard. We got to raise it, though, in competition. We got to raise it for match officials, and we got to raise it for coaches. Why don't I have players on here? Anybody?
You need this stuff that will get here. So.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Exactly. The players will be the end goal. This is the process. How do we raise it all the way along? How do we raise it for each of our important aspects of things? And making sure that they're all done equally. Do we have the environment for coaches and match officials to improve? Do we have that at different levels? And that's where we got to be mindful of. It is different. Not everybody is going to be at the top. So do we have a level for everybody to participate? Okay. So within this, we've kind of looked at the 4 stages, and it's all at age. It's back to LTAD if you kind of look at it from that perspective. But what we wanted to make sure of is there's other aspects to it. So within that minor U6 to U10, it's game leaders. What does that incorporate? Thankfully, Rob's going to take care of that. When it comes to youth, and we're lucky to have Brock working with us on this, is actually doing proper research. So we're not going to make decisions just on a whim. We're doing the research to find what is the best way to do this from a skills development, but from also participation retention. It's like, what's keeping kids in the sport and how are they getting better? Is it 13s? Is it 10s? Is it different size fields? What is the way to do it? So we have, thankfully, Kingston helping part of it. We've got Burlington on the other side helping. So this year we'll also be doing a bit of video research on different games. So as the university are going to be able to put that research together to then come back to us and say, right, here's the recommendation and here's the rationale. So we're going to you and saying, right, here's what's recommended from there. Going into junior, I say development performance varies. And this is where we look at people coming into the sport. A lot of people kind of move out of other sports at this age. We've seen it with the research. And so if we're going to bring them in, we got to make sure they're in at the right level. So thankfully, in bringing in that regional component as well as the provincial component has allowed us to do that. And it's actually worked. Within the senior, breaking out last year into the premiership, the championship, and the branch has led to a lot more meaningful games. The score lines are a lot closer and much better than they used to be, which is fantastic. And not forgetting mixed ability and masters. We want to make sure that none of those are forgotten. Okay. The last one then is T1. This is going to become a much bigger phrase coming at you over the next year. We've been lucky enough to work with Rugby Canada on acquiring a World Rugby grant to actually get somebody in to help with T1. So that is the official non-contact. Has anybody seen T1? The videos, anything like that? Yeah? What do you think, Jim?
I don't know. It's teaching a different skill than the flag that we use now.
Yeah.
It's teaching a different style of
I like the fact that you actually have the lineouts. You got things that are actually rugby. It's not just flag and which is not rugby. So that's why I like that kind of closeness to it. So there is always that option to move across back into contact full rugby. Because you're actually keeping a lot of the skills. So I think that's going to be a big benefit. Our initial grant and where we're looking at is more on the corporate side of things, on the adult participation. A lot of it is kind of why we went that way is because I find that if there's something for adults, it's very simple to put on a kids session beside it. I don't know about where you are. I'm in Markham. There is very little for my age group to do. So in that way, if there's a social thing where I can go out and play without breaking my back again, it'd be great. But that isn't an option. Even the soccer for adults has gone down to 4 teams from what used to be 12. It's not there. You're doing pickleball or nothing. So in that way, this is where we kind of got to look at those options. But how do we as a community open that up and say, well, if adults can take up this half the pitch, we can do kids on this part. If we look at the corporate side, the hope is we can look at how do we make this financially viable and beneficial to clubs, to our sport, to help grow the clubs. So this is where we kind of have that correlation between the two. Okay. So it kind of comes back into that contact, non-contact, offering opportunities right the way through. So Jocelyn mentioned earlier on about the AIR all in rugby and how that's going from 11 up. Same kind of concept. So we want to be able to provide that opportunity. Okay. I'd mentioned some of the numbers. Carolyn always inspires us to just use data. This is the numbers looking at juniors rugby last year. I was told in no uncertain terms that breaking into regional provincial is going to destroy the sport. It is not. As you can see by even U18 boys, nearly a 60% growth in clubs participating in that age group. Not players, not team, clubs. So when I kind of look and say, right, well, if the worst case scenario is only 8% growth, I still have a pretty good growth. Okay. That's not any. No, so this is just the club. So in that way, this isn't looking at actual numbers of participation. Gabby didn't do it for me that way, though. This is from the summer, and Gabby was intense. Yeah. That's not in this actual thing. It's only regarded as one because it's one club that's doing it. Yeah. That participation number we will start to look at and start to grow. This was just a mid-July. Got Gabby to quickly throw something together as I was trying to make a point to somebody on clubs participating. So it's not even number of teams. It's not players. It's not any of those things. Rob?
Not that I want to talk with my boss or anything, but
yes, I'd be mindful.
I don't think we know that this is that shit. I think it's the first year.
Oh,
I don't know something next year.
No, and that's why for me it was very much. This is just a snippet in the middle of July of clubs. It takes, what do you think, Carl? 2-3 years to really see what the numbers will truly be. So no, this is just a quick snippet to say, well, it didn't go backwards. It didn't have a hampering impact, but we want to be able to start somewhere to see what it's like. Okay. So some of the other interesting points. This year we had about 2,406 games of rugby through the summer. The biggest number for 1 week was 210 games in the middle of July. For that, there are 707 registered coaches. And I use the word registered loosely. Mike and his MOs, there's 266 registered, there's 255 actually active. We did break down the number of games every one of them did, which is why I'm saying active. So as we know who did how many games throughout this year. Because one of the big things for me is, well, why aren't you doing games? Is it a matter of you couldn't get availability? Nobody selected you? Is it an appointment issue? Is it a location issue? Is there all of these different things kind of come into play. So that's why we do have a full breakdown of what that is. Next one. And this is one of the other ones that I'm tracking. So last year, 2024, 107 took a level 1 MO course. 45% actually used that to register as an MO. So when you look at 45 participants from 23 continued to register, only 39 from 23 registered in 2025. One of the other ones I looked at was a 2-year. So I took from 2022 to 2024. We had 43% of people that registered as a match official from courses in 2023, only 19% in 2024. So there was a massive drop after their first year of registering as a match official. So that's one of those big things of why. So this is what we're trying to look at and why we put our surveys out to the match officials to go through with them. It's like, is it an abuse issue? Is it an availability issue? Is it a cost issue? What are the different things that are going on that makes you not want to come back? What are the different age groups that are involved in that? One of the other sides of research that we're doing, and I'm gone blank on the guy's name from Newfoundland, Scott. Thank you. Dave Hancock in Newfoundland is doing a lot of research on match officials. And he put together a group that actually came to Vaughan in September, in which we spent 2 days working with them and working with researchers, working with, I think it was 12 different sports that were in the room, trying to figure out within officiating what's going on. Thankfully, they have another one set up happening soon. So that's another group we're working with to try find how do we help. So it's an interesting when we just look at the numbers and how that happens. So thankfully, ECHO will be doing another survey to match officials pretty soon for a third year, looking at some of this thing. Like,
Do you have any numbers on level 2 official?
no, I haven't. It's a good thing to do. It's one of those that we looked at it from a participation perspective. Because those that are doing the level 2 have already been in it for a while. We wanted to look at those that are coming into it. So those that are starting in 55%, 57% are just coaches trying to learn the game better, which is nice.
You've got that number, because that was my next question. Participant, I mean, I've done enough of these courses, over enough of these courses that half the numbers are coaches.
So this year was 57% were coaches doing a match official course. So only 43% actually registered as a referee in 2025. 2024 was 55% of those taking a match official course were coaches. Unfortunately, we need to put in a module on the course of how to treat referees during games. We'll figure that one out later. Okay, but I just thought it was some interesting numbers that you see the amount of games that are taking place. So if we think of 2,400 games with 255 match officials, it's a lot. We were tasked recently by a board member to see, well, how do we make it better? If we give you 50 grand, how do you help raise the number of match officials? If we give it free registration or we give away kit, it's like, no, we're just going to get more, but that doesn't mean they're going to be active. Doesn't mean we're going to have better referees. So it's that thing of, it's not just about money. There's something else that we have to do to be better at it. So this is the big thing what we're trying to figure out. Not high schools, because we don't know anything about them. It does include OFSA, but not high schools, because I don't know what they're scheduled.
Also officials being beyond first year officials.
Yeah, you're talking about numbers of games, right, Rupert? Yeah, but yes, you would hope so. All right, Joss. All right, so as I was talking about earlier with breakdown, what we're going to be doing is creating within this to make it easier. So every row will be straight on what age group you want to get to. So in that way, if you've got your club and hopefully you've got a technical director as wonderful as Kate, they'll be able to go in and say, hey, game leaders, this is your line. This is your row. Do all these things. Within match official level 1s, within match official level 2. So each designation will have a row for their own stuff. They don't need to go to World Rugby. Don't have to go to NCCP. They don't have to go everywhere else. We can have it here. Whenever we do sessions, whether it be Sheldon or Sando or Karen or whomever, they will go into here. So it becomes that one-stop shop for wherever they need to be. And why? I know I've updated it, but I couldn't find it. But 2023, why we did an awful lot of this on game leaders was frightening to me as a father of 2 kids within the minor age group. We have 169 registered coaches for 244 minor teams. And 32 of them had no qualification, certification, or anything. Part of me wants to find out how many of them have no even background checks. Who are we letting on the pitch with our smallest kids? We talk about some of the stuff on tackling. We talk about any of these things. It's like, well, when they're coming through the informative years, who are training and who are actually coaching the kids? So this for me is frightening. Absolutely frightening. Like, I'm still an educator with soccer for this age group, and I'm a dad of 2 kids at this age group, and it really worries me who's on a field. So that's the biggest one of why we want to look at. We can't even see how many, like, if we're looking to say, right, well, 244, you have what, 3 to 4 coaches at each age? Potentially, each team. So it really is frightening how few certified or anything coaches we have. That's why exactly we have kind of switched Rob's life around next year and beyond to do just that. look at this area, how does it fit? Hopefully it'll kind of transition that into schools and resources with teachers and stuff as well. But looking at these youngest age groups, how do we help it? We've been talking about calendars for a long time. This is what we're finally getting to. Liz may have mentioned her 52-week calendar that she loves. This is just a screenshot of what we're prepping. We're trying to fit with Play HQ coming in, how this can now transform into an online thing. Once I can get Sandro to stop messing around with this, I will be able to get it out to everybody in at least this ugly fashion of an Excel, but at least you get an idea of everything going on. We want to make sure this becoming a live document. So in that way, every year, and as we go along, everybody can see what's happening. So we've put into here what we know of right up to December of 2026. So whether it's CRCs, which we're hosting in Guelph in July, whether it's Ontario Summer Games, whether it's Victoria Day or Mother's Day, because I missed that one year, I was really in trouble. So I had to put it into the calendar. Everything is in here. So we want to make sure it's visible. So when you're planning something, you know what else is going on. If you want to do something else, you know what's going on. Okay. We're trying to look at club events. I think we finally have most of them from clubs now as to what's going on. So that'll go into here as well. So you can try avoid other things going on in your area. But hopefully that'll fit through there. Did he?
Maybe I don't know the acronym. This happened all this past year. There was going to be a Canadian game.
Yeah.
We didn't know when.
Same with us.
We're hoping for. So I guess that's the question mark. If there's going to be international windows or games or potentials, can they be identified this far in advance before we sign up for our festival weekend, same day, or are planning to go elsewhere on the Sunday and then gets bumped 2 months? Is there that?
They are
synchronicity?
Yeah, they're finalizing. Johnny, I'm correct in thinking we have an idea of roughly when. We're just trying to finalize the final pieces of where it is going to be, right?
Yeah.
So Rugby Canada are being, I think because of the Nations Cup and the way the international calendar is now being set and the fact that we're heading to World Cups and the women's are doing what they're doing, we're now finally getting more information. Because for the longest time, as Rugby Canada weren't getting the information to give to us, for us to give to you. So there was that little bit of a trickle. With the Nations Cup, it makes it a bit easier. So I know this year they're trying to figure, we have one in Toronto area potentially. We have one in potentially Ottawa. So they're just trying to figure out that calendar. But the way they're looking, they think they'll have it sooner than later, which means it'll go here, it'll go on the website, it'll go out to make sure we know. Because our big one is community events around that. Like, how do we make sure that we put on good community stuff for minors, for coaching, for match officials? How do we use them as development opportunities? Like we know for CRCs, at the end of that one, for the CRCs, we're making sure in Guelph that we're using that as a vehicle to do other things to grow the sport. That it isn't a one-off event, because that doesn't help us grow everything. Rupert?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Could you tab that as well by region?
Yeah.
Because I'm not
Well,
concerned necessarily
No.
what's going on, so at least Ontario.
It's one of those, I'm just gonna get it out.
Yeah,
Because for years we've been trying to get it out, so that we just get it out. When it goes on, and hopefully Danny, I think we're trying to figure this out, PHQ, for the website and for calendars and all of these things. You can just filter it.
Yeah.
You kind of figure it out, because as you can see, I have a lot to do. So hit filter, JD, just hit the filter. You'll be good. Rupert?
I think if he's successful with this, and make it standard part of think about planning the rugby across the province.
Yeah.
It'll become a very powerful tool for putting that on the dates and
Yeah.
say, the club cup is this date. And if you start encroaching on that, if you're a university or whatever, you can come back to the chart and say, you know, it will all be respect, bringing your players back from 15 days ahead of this line is a bit of
Next. So this is the club. That one. So in that way, we keep as much as we can outside. It comes back to that age-old thing within coaching, control the controllables. Certain things I cannot control. So Ontario Summer Games, Canada Summer Games, CRCs, I have no control over those things. International games, no control over. But what we can control, we are very much trying to keep it within that. This is a club window. So this is HP window, this is this window. So as in that way, we have an idea. So that's the idea around this page. Okay, same when branches do their things, when we're not calling it OBDA anymore for those that are interested. It's Junior Blues, but you'll be getting a big one. HP will be releasing a good communication stuff within the next week and a half. We're just putting it with the communications team to get it out looking organized. So yeah, that's exactly it. Is looking at the windows. Yeah. All right. So the big one that brings it back to the topic, aligning within the branches, using that side of things. What we're trying to do is have these technical game leaders localized. It'd be great if we can have one per club. That'd be the ultimate. I think we have 48 that are doing minors, something like that, around that. I'd love to have one for every single club. We'll get there. Right now we've 12. So we need to grow that side of it. One thing that we're currently working with the branch presidents on are getting branch coordinators. So some people have them, some don't. We need a lot more. So in that way, a club knows who the designated person is within their area to go speak to at minors, at youth, at junior, at senior. And then having that roles responsibilities very, very clear on who leads and who organizes what. The hope is to get back to that localized. If there's a change needed, it doesn't have to go to Charlotte, everything. Okay. We have an operational committees. I don't know at this point, are we 7 or 8 of them? So many of them that Jocelyn and I kind of work with. Every single one of those is based on having a representative from a branch. So as to get that information. So whether that's match officials, it's competitions, coaches, minor, youth, they all have a representative from a branch. The idea, and I'm saying idea, is that that communication can then get right the way down in a much easier fashion. Did it work fully? That's a great. Is that something that we've been telling them to do? Yes. So we are trying to get that disseminated down a lot better. So as those points of contact know who to speak to in every club. So to make it easier that way. With match officials, we do the same. We're trying to work on having more coach and match officials, CMOs. So last year we trained up an additional 12. We're hoping now to get even more again this coming year to get trained up. So as they're going to be more regionalized to be able to work with referees right the way around. Okay. Same with coaches. We got 3 development coaches that we work with. So the way they'll do is work with the level 1s and up. So they won't be dealing with the minors. That's going to be Rob and the technical game leaders. Level 1s will be the 3 that we have. So Gary Robinson, we got Sandy Townsend, and then we got Nappy over this side of the world. Okay. Everything is trying to get it within a localized level. So as we get, more importantly, that localized information back. So when we have a coaching committee, what we're now trying to set, and we started a little bit of last year, but need to put more into it, is having then a local committee underneath that one. So like that subcommittee of local that brings it up and brings it up. Okay. So this is where we look at that. The biggest one that I want to get across, and we've kind of been getting bits of it through the day. Our competition isn't inside. For some reason, we love to just put ourselves down. And we love to go at everybody else and every other club and every other person around us. That's not our competition. Ontario Soccer did some research a couple of years ago. And to maintain the current landscape of participation in organized sport, every household needs to have about 2.5 kids. The average is 1.8. So in that way, the competition is the other sports. So whether it's football or hockey, or soccer, or any of these, that's where the competition is. We need to get into the mentality. And I always find it's funny when people say, I love rugby, rugby is my sport. Well, then stop at everybody else. We're all trying to do the same thing. We want to grow our sport. That's what we have to do. So hopefully that's where we're going to aim to get to. All right. Any questions? Jordy.
You showed the previous slide there.
Yeah.
You want to clarify what tomorrow operating?
Yeah.
You said that they're made up of brain.
There's club representation and there's branch representation. Yeah. Although branch people are club people too, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did that, those communities like, we able to understand what our folks in on was?
Yeah, yeah, we're currently going through a revision of those. So Brandon sat on, yeah, one of those for quite a while. He has now stepped aside. So yeah, it all depends on who has brought benefit to our sport. So we don't look at them as being, well, you're a representative of Barry. You're actually a representative of common sense and somebody that's going to help us grow the sport. That's it. I don't care where they're from. That's the key. The only people that we care where they're from is the 4 branches get 1 person on each one to make sure the information gets back. Everybody else is who helps the sport. Matter? You're the last one in the line.
I'd say church, they have terms of reference, we can.
They do. We'll put out a bit more. We're currently revising. An operation committee is basically an advisory group to me or to Jocelyn or to Sandra. That's the simplest way of it. So as we have more kind of points of contact or across the thing. So coaching, match officials, competitions. Who have you got? Bill belonging, minor working groups, youth development. So different aspects that you have within those groups. Sorry? Yeah. Education liaison. So that's a new one that's trying to work with. The newest one we actually are just building is participant welfare. So you always used to be player welfare. So it kind of comes back to that blue card side of things. It's been led by somebody that deals in concussions. So that's the latest one we're looking at, participant welfare. So from mental health, as well as what are the policies and procedures and everything else that we need to put in place. So that's the newest one for me, which is vital. But yeah, we're going to put together a communication thing on that. We're just, I'm trying to say, revising who's on it. We are looking at the composition because some of them have been gone for 2 years. So I like to have fresh blood. So we're just revising those at the moment. But yeah, we can do a big communication on that. That's no problem. Any other questions?